Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So we're reading from Canto 4, Chapter 12, Text 16.
Oh, no, text 18.
Oh yeah, because I didn't have the book yesterday. Sorry. 18. 4/12/18, live from Matchless Gifts.
26 2nd Avenue, New York, New York.
Right.
Lower East Side of Manhattan.
Yes.
Haribol.
Haribol.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Text 18. Because of his transcendental bliss, incessant tears flowed from his eyes, his heart melted, and there was shivering and standing of the hairs all over his body. Thus transformed in a trance of devotional service, Dhruva Maharaj completely forgot his bodily existence, and thus he immediately became liberated from material bondage. Purport. Due to constant engagement in devotional service, hearing, chanting, remembering, worshipping the deity, etc., as prescribed in 9 varieties, there are different symptoms which appear in the body of a devotee. These 8 bodily transformations, which indicate that a devotee is already liberated within himself, are called Asta, Sattvika, Vikara. When a devotee completely forgets his bodily existence, he should be understood to be liberated. He is no longer encaged in the body. The example is given that when a coconut becomes completely dry, the coconut pulp within the coconut shell separates from the bondage of the shell and the outer covering. By moving the dry coconut, one can hear that the pulp within is no longer attached to the shell or to the covering. Similarly, when one is fully absorbed in devotional service, he is completely disconnected from the 2 material coverings, the subtle and gross bodies. Dhruva Maharaj actually attained this stage of life by constantly discharging devotional service. He has already been described as a Mahabhagavat, for unless one becomes a Mahabhagavat or a first-class pure devotee, these symptoms are not visible. Lord Chaitanya exhibited all these symptoms. Thakur Haridas also exhibited them, and there are many pure devotees who manifested such bodily symptoms. They are not to be imitated, but when one is actually advanced, these symptoms are exhibited. At that time, it is to be understood that a devotee is materially free. Of course, from the beginning of devotional service, the path of liberation immediately opens, just as the coconut taken from the tree immediately begins to dry. It simply takes some time for the shell and pulp to separate from one another. That reminds of that example, isn't it, that Prabhupada gives of the mango that I'm sure I can remember, but anyway, that everyone's pure devotee. Someone
green mango, ripe mango. A mango is a mango.
Yeah, so this is like that. The coconut, once it's taken from the tree, just as once we are born, we're dying. We've started to decay, as it were. We're going to get older. 1 day old, 2 day old, 5 months old, 10 years old. We're getting old. It just reminded me of that some will move faster than others, depending on circumstances and past life and situations, but as Prabhupada says, it will take time, but the shell and the pulp will separate, so we will become detached and realized, because once you're on the path, that is, there's no like I said, that's what we were saying in the previous reading, like people that sat here in 26 2nd Avenue, so many of them, we don't know who they are. We know a few because they continued on the path or not, we still know them. So many we don't actually. We don't even know that we don't know them because we don't know them. They're not recording anywhere, like Bob, Sue or whatever. So, but they took that droplets of mercy, so whether it's in this lifetime or how many more, they are on that path of the shell, as use that analogy of the shell and the pulp being separated. They're on the path.
Yeah, I think it's a really nice analogy. How the coconut pulp inside becomes detached, and we become detached internally from the external covering. It's really nice analogy. Next paragraph. An important word in this verse is mukta linga. Mukta means liberated, and linga means the subtle body. When a man dies, he quits the gross body, but the subtle body of mind, intelligence, and ego carries him to a new body. While existing in the present body, the same subtle body carries him from one stage of life to another. For example, from childhood to boyhood, by mental development. The mental condition of a baby is different from that of a boy. The mental condition of a boy is different from that of a young man, and the mental condition of a young man is different from that of an old man. So at death, the process of changing bodies takes place due to the subtle body. The mind, intelligence, and ego carry the soul from one gross body to another. This is called transmigration of the soul. But there is another stage, when one becomes liberated even from the subtle body. At that time, the living entity is competent and fully prepared to be transferred to the transcendental or spiritual world. So I guess this is really what we're trying to do, which is we relinquish certain levels of attachment to the material body, but the hardest work is becoming detached from the subtle body, especially the mind, always giving some stuff, thinking I'm intelligent. Gyanis cultivate knowledge, focusing on the cerebral or the mental platform. And of course the ego, or the identity that I am this body, I am an American man, born XYZ, I'm this old, I do this, the color of my skin, the country or the state of my birth or whatever. We have all these misidentifications. So this is conceptual ideas about the gross body. Someone may have, I'm inferior, I have this complex, I have that complex, or I'm superior and I have this. So this is all subtle things. So we have to also conquer over this, and then once we conquer that, then we become prepared for going back to the spiritual world, transferring it at the end of this life. Not that subtle body is going to carry us on to the next body, but that the soul itself moves directly on to the spiritual world, or the next destination, which may be another birth. It's described in Shastra that at the end of this life, even if you're ready to go back to Godhead, you don't go directly back to Godhead. You have to take birth in Bhoma Vrindavan, or an earthly Vrindavan, where Krishna has appeared and is manifesting his pastimes, and you enter into the pastimes still in the material world, but as close to the spiritual world as possible, because Krishna is personally present and performing his Leela and his pastimes. So it might not be on this earth planet, but it may be on an earthly plane in another universe. But you take birth in order to...
Training,
in order to get training. Then, once you complete that, then in the next birth you go back to Godhead. Krishna. It ain't easy.
Alright, next paragraph of this purport. The description of the bodily symptoms of Sri Dhruva Maharaj makes it apparent that he became perfectly fit to be transferred to the spiritual world. One can experience the distinction between the subtle and gross bodies even daily in a dream. One's gross body is lying on the bed, while the subtle body carries the soul, the living entity, to another atmosphere. But because the gross body has to be continued, the subtle body comes back and settles in the present gross body. Therefore, one has to become free from the subtle body also. This freedom is known as Mukta Linga. Yeah, so got the gross body and the subtle body. And as Prabhupada says, we do experience leaving the body, as it were, now. Because when we dream, then we do. But as Prabhupada says, then we come right back. So we wake up, and then we look at ourselves, oh yeah, phew, yeah. Oh, that was only a dream, oh thank goodness. Not realising that you actually woke up in the nightmare, because to be going through birth, old age, disease and death is the real nightmare. You don't realise that you woke up in the living nightmare.
Yeah, it's another nice analogy for... These analogies are so necessary and so helpful for us to understand what are relatively complex spiritual concepts. So to think about the fact that, yeah, I do go to sleep and I have a dream, and sometimes I have like dream that I'm here, dream that I'm there, I dream that I'm talking with another person, but then I wake up and I'm back in my body. But you can say, well, that was just a dream, it wasn't real. But who's to say that it's any less real? Because sometimes people wake up very haunted by a dream all day long. They can't stop thinking about the dream. They become disturbed by the dream, or they become elated by the dream. I mean, I may have mentioned this, but on the subtle platform, you can have dreams that are, so erotic that they cause a material manifestation. So this means that is the power of the subtle body, that we think, like you said, you think you're in the nightmare while you're asleep, but when you wake up, you're actually in the real nightmare, because this is the material world, and this is more difficult in one sense to escape, because we are so convinced it's real. But this is, and that's why it's such a nightmare.
We wake up in the wrong matrix, and we think that is with faith. It's quite an interesting concept, isn't it? And then you don't realise you're still bound.
Yeah. Mukta Linga, nice term. Mukta Linga means freedom from the subtle body. Okay.
It's you now.
Okay, so we'll read one more. 12:19. So this is chapter 12, text number 19. As soon as the symptoms of his liberation were manifest, he saw a very beautiful airplane coming down from the sky, as if the brilliant full moon were coming down, illuminating all the 10 directions. So this is a very exciting part of the Dhruva Leela and pastime. So, I don't want to give a spoiler. No, I'm not going to do an alert because I'm not going to spoil it, but this is a very powerful part of the pastime. Purport: there are different levels of acquired knowledge: direct knowledge, knowledge received from authorities, transcendental knowledge, knowledge beyond the senses, and finally spiritual knowledge. Interesting. Transcendental knowledge and knowledge beyond the senses seem like two different things, and then there's spiritual knowledge. When one surpasses the stage of acquiring knowledge by the descending process, he is immediately situated in the transcendental platform. Okay, interesting. Dhruva Maharaj, being liberated from the material concept of life, was situated in the transcendental knowledge and could perceive the presence of a transcendental airplane, which was as brilliant as the full moonlight. This is not possible on the stage of direct or indirect perception of knowledge. Such knowledge is a special favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can, however, rise to this platform of knowledge by the gradual process of advancing in devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Well, this is an interesting statement and purport. And I must confess, I can't profess to have understood it completely. But what I took away from it was that knowledge beyond the senses. When one surpasses the stage of acquiring knowledge by the descending process, he's immediately situated on the transcendental platform. So, it seems because it says he could perceive the presence of a transcendental airplane. Now, the question being, was that transcendental airplane really there? Or was that transcendental airplane only visible on a certain plane of consciousness that he could perceive because he was on that level? Meaning that hypothetically, like sometimes we may have the experience of someone leaving their body and they're like, and they say they see something or they're experiencing something going on that you can't perceive and you can't see, and we may say, oh, they're hallucinating, they're imagining things. But again, on that mental platform, in the subtle body, if one is perceiving things on a transcendental level, then one may be experiencing, as Srila Prabhupada likely was, experiencing Krishna in every step, in every walk, in every glance. In things he would look and see Krishna's hands. I mean, he maybe have been seeing Krishna personally present when he took darshan of the deities. He definitely was present or visible. What was visible to him was the miracle of Krishna's magic happening, and especially here, from here. So anyway, it's maybe more will be explained later, but it's an interesting concept, and these different levels of acquiring knowledge I'd not really heard before. So interesting.
Prabhupada will reveal it.
He will reveal it. Okay, should we stop there?
Yes.
All right, thank you all very much for tuning in. Please keep coming back. We've decided as much as possible we're going to come and keep reading here in 26 Second Avenue in the Matchless Gifts. We'll create a little variety and move around, but it's just so wonderful being here. And hopefully Bhava Bhakti will do a Bhakti Vision about 26 Second Avenue.
Well, I did do one last year for those who are loyal Bhakti Vision followers, but obviously that doesn't mean I can't do another one.
So that would have been probably in July.
Yeah, but it may not.
So you can look it up. You can go search it out right now. Give a thumbs up. All right, thanks everyone. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.